Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another iteration of our training series. This time we're going to be talking about money mule scams. If this training seems familiar, we have recorded this previously, but we had a corrupted file from the recording, so we're just recording it again real quick. This won't be a real long training, probably around 15 minutes or so. I'm going to read you a couple disclaimers and then we'll get going. This project was funded in whole or in part under a contract with the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. The statements herein do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the department. This project was supported by grant number V01-779, awarded by the Montana Board of Crime Control through the Office of Justice Programs, U.S. Department of Justice. Points of view in this presentation are those of the presenter and do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of the U.S. Department of Justice. Here is the contact information for our grant. If you need any information or assistance with senior financial exploitation, abuse, or neglect, please contact our grant, the Senior Defense Grant. Here's Katie's contact information here, as well as for myself. And then, as always, if you need to find any of our previous trainings, you can find them at our training page here at this link. And if you can't find one that you're looking for, or if a link is broken, anything like that, please just let me know. And I will get that fixed or get the right training to you. All right, so without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, we're talking about money mule scams today. So we're going to try and not help the criminals. My name is Richard Heisman. I'm the project coordinator for the Senior Defense Grant. So what is a money mule scam? Well, a money mule scam is a scam in which an unsuspecting or unwilling victim is either forced or tricked into transferring money for a criminal enterprise. In some rare forms of the scam, people are actually carrying physical cash. So that would be like a money mule in the traditional sense, where they're taking money on an airplane or physically transporting cash from one place to another. Usually, though, this is a digital scam in which they're asking these seniors or the victims to transfer funds electronically on their behalf. And there are many forms of this scam, so you have to know each one to know what to look out for. So the forced money mule scam, that's one we'll talk about first. Usually in this version of the scam, the mule is a former victim of the scam. So they've fallen for some type of online scam, a lottery scam, something like that, where they've sent these folks money already. They're out this money, they realized it was a scam, and now they're trying to figure out what to do next. So the scammers tell them they'll get their money back if they simply transfer funds for them. Now, to the layman, transferring funds doesn't really seem like something that would be illegal. You're just sending money to somebody. But the problem is that usually these funds are illegally obtained, and the people that you're transferring money for are criminals. So transferring funds for an illegal enterprise is a criminal act. And then that act that you've done for this criminal enterprise can then be leveraged against you. They can use that against you to say, well, you've done this illegal thing, we can turn you in, or you can continue to do illegal things for us. And that's how they trap folks into becoming a permanent mule for them. The next is the laundering scam. So this would be when people are tricked into being a money mule. So in this variation, they may think that they have a new job opportunity where they're simply transferring funds back and forth. Maybe they're claiming a prize. They have to pay the taxes or the fees associated to get this prize. Or maybe they're just helping out a friend that they met online that needs some money sent around, moved around for them. So when it comes to folks pretending it's a new job, they'll advertise this fake job and claim that the victim in this case, or the employee, will be transferring funds on behalf of the company. Once they transfer those funds for the folks, for those people, they might receive a one-time payment, or they could be set up to receive, like a more standard paycheck So from their end, it seems like a legitimate operation. Unfortunately, these are stolen funds. Anytime you're transferring stolen funds, whether knowingly or unknowingly, you're incriminating yourself. That is an illegal act, and you have just committed an illegal act if you have transferred those funds, whether you knew that they were stolen funds or not. In another variation, the scammers will tell the mule that they've won a prize and that they have to pay a portion back for taxes or fees. So they'll send them out this big payment and then ask for a portion of it back. Now, when you do win a lottery or something like that, there are taxes associated usually. Those are all taken care of after the fact. They're not going to ask you to send them money up front to get your prize, nor are they going to send you extra money and then ask you to send that money back. That's a cumbersome extra step that a company wouldn't do unless they're trying to cover something up or trying to transfer some money that isn't actually theirs to be transferred. And then finally, in the third version of this scam, a scammer pretends to be a friend or a online love interest, family member, somebody like that online. And oftentimes, well, they'll ask for money from the victim, first of all. Oftentimes, they'll actually send the victim money first without even being prompted. They'll, give them gifts or send them a few small funds here and there, just to make it seem like it's a normal thing to do, that this is just a standard part of their relationship. And then eventually they will request some of that money or all of it to be returned back to them. And you're essentially laundering that money for them should you take them up on their offer. So always be careful when you're dealing with somebody online. It's so easy to impersonate somebody online, and it's so difficult to know that you're actually talking to who you're talking to. So are money mules at risk? This sounds like a pretty simple action that they're asking these victims to do. It's the bad guys are the ones that are doing all the illegal action. They're the ones stealing the funds. So is it even an issue to be a money mule? Well, absolutely. Money mules can be tried as accessories to the crime. So they can be tried as if they knew what they were doing. They took part in it willingly. They even helped plan the attempt or plan the transfer of funds, plan the laundering. Whether that's true or not, that is a possibility. If you take part in one of these scams, you're opening yourself up to that possibility. Also, these victims, the money mules, could be held liable to the financial institution for stolen funds. So if the bank finds out that these funds that they've been sending them for months and months, or even just now, were fraudulent, that bank is going to want the money repaid to them. And the mule may be the one that's held liable for those funds. And then finally, if you are working with these individuals and you've set up accounts for them on their behalf, and they have your information to pay money into your account, that means they have access to your online banking and your banking in general. They know your account, they know your passwords, obviously, if they're able to get into it. So that's the third and final risk for money mules, is their information is now breached. That personal identifiable information is now out there. So how do you protect yourself? And how do you recover if you're a current victim of, if you're a current money mule? So first of all, it's the same rule as with any other financial exploitation issue. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. Job offers, lotteries, prizes, anything like that, that just seems like it's coming out of nowhere. It's just all good news, all upsides, no downsides. It's a scam. There is nothing in the world that is all upsides and no downsides. Secondly, don't accept a job asking you to transfer money independently. So no legitimate organization would ever ask you as an individual to transfer funds on their behalf. First of all, they're not going to trust just one new employee to handle funds on that scale. That's just not how that's done in a legitimate business. There's departments set up for that type of thing. And no legitimate organization is ever going to ask one individual to transfer money on their behalf. Nor should you be opening up any accounts on behalf of the company. If they're asking you to open up a personal account and saying that it's on behalf of their company, that should be a huge red flag. If there's any accounts associated with that company, they should be originated by the company, opened up on their dime, on their time, on their dollar. So nobody should ever be asking you to open up an account on behalf of the organization you work for. Never pay to accept a prize. I know we talked a little bit about if you win the lottery, you're going to have to pay taxes, things like that. That's all very regulated. You'll get official documentation from the IRS if that's the case. When it comes to these little prizes and things like that they advertise on the internet or on daytime television, things like that, if they're asking you to pay a fee or something like that up front, that's a scam. If they're sending you a larger amount of money than the prize and then asking you to send a portion back, that's a scam. If you win a legitimate prize, it's going to be very regulated. It's going to be very controlled. You're going to get the payment. You're going to get statements from IRS talking about tax implications of that payment, things like that. If someone who has stolen from you is pressuring you into transferring money, contact the police immediately. So remember back when I said this could be a forced arrangement. If you've fallen for a scam and suddenly the scammer is saying, look, you're never going to get this money back unless you do this thing for me, you need to contact the police immediately, because while I know it's hard to lose funds, you don't want to lose that money, but it could be a lot worse if you go forward with the arrangement that the criminal is suggesting. So if you go ahead and transfer that money, you're going to be held liable. And then further actions can be taken upon you as a criminal, not just a victim of a scam at that point, but as a participating member of a criminal enterprise. So instead of, listening to these scammers and letting yourself get into a deeper situation, just go ahead and stop at that point, call the police, and let the professionals take care of it from that point. And lastly, don't ever send money to an online friend or love interest, even if they send you money first. So I know this one is difficult. Oftentimes we have friends, family, people like that are far flung around the country, around the world even, and folks get into trouble, they need help. We can all understand that. But when it comes to somebody that you only know online, you've never met them in person, they're not family members, they're people that you've only interacted with online, do not send the money, regardless of the situation. Even if they're sending you hundreds and hundreds of dollars every week, and they just ask for a few dollars in return, there's a reason for that. Nobody just does that type of thing out of the blue. So they're attempting to get you to launder that money for them, to somehow put it through a transaction, buy things with it, sell things, whatever they're asking you to do with those funds. Basically, they're trying to wash those funds so that they're untraceable, because they're stolen. So if anybody's ever asking you to send money back to them, if they're sending you money, want them to send it back to them. If they just out of the blue ask you to send the money, that should be a huge, huge red flag. And then if you want a little bit more information on money mule scams, please check out the Federal Trade's consumer advice website. That's where I got most of the information for this presentation. They have a litany of resources there, as well as a lot more information as to, how these scams are perpetrated, what variations there are, and how you can protect yourself, or better yet, end exploitation that's already occurring, because that's our main goal here at the Senior Financial Defense Grant, is that we're making sure victims put an end to the victimization, and then starting that recovery process. So, and with that, that's all I have for you. I told you it would be a short one today, and we did not disappoint. So because we don't have a live audience, we don't have any questions. So you folks have a great day. And as always, please get a hold of the grant if you have any questions or suggestions for further trainings. Thanks, everybody.